Before we dive in, if you love epic tales of war, strategy, hit that subscribe and like button, turn on notifications, and join our growing legion of warriors. Now, let's begin. Imagine this. The void of space is a graveyard of forgotten empires. It stretches endlessly in all directions, indifferent to the rise and fall of civilizations. And yet, within this silent abyss, a war is brewing. A war that should have never been possible. The Galactic Dominion, an empire so vast that its borders swallow entire constellations, has ruled the stars for millennia. It does not ask for surrender. It does not negotiate. It simply arrives, dominates, and absorbs. Resistance is crushed, worlds are stripped bare, species are subjugated or eradicated without a second thought. The Dominion does not conquer out of hatred. It does not wage war for glory. It expands because it is its nature, like fire consuming a forest, like a black hole devouring light, cold, mechanical, inevitable. And now its hunger has turned toward a small, insignificant world at the edge of the Orion Arm, a world whose people should have no chance of survival. Earth. The Dominion's analysts had studied humans from afar, watched their wars, their technology, their fragile alliances. They were primitive, divided, not yet capable of faster-than-light travel beyond their closest neighboring systems, not even a unified species. The calculations were simple. Humanity would fall in a matter of hours, a conquest so effortless it barely required a fleet. And so, the invasion began. The arrival it started with shadows blotting out the stars. A single Dominion warship could lay waste to an entire planet. A fleet of 50, each over 10 kilometers, long, bristling with plasma lances and gravitic cannons, descended upon Sol like silent gods of destruction. They did not hail Earth. They did not send warnings. There was no need. Within seconds, the world was cut off. Communication satellites blinked out of existence, erased from orbit like dust wiped from a table. The Internet, humanity's fragile web of knowledge, collapsed as artificial intelligence. Viruses infiltrated networks, reducing data to meaningless static. Every radio transmission, every distress call, every scream into the darkness, silenced. Then came the energy barriers. Invisible domes engulfed every major city. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, locking billions of people inside their own prisons. These shields weren't meant to protect. They were meant to contain. The Dominion had done this before, hundreds of times, across thousands of worlds. Resistance was always the same. Military jets scrambled into the sky, their weapons useless, against an enemy that did not acknowledge them as threats. Missiles detonated harmlessly against shields designed to withstand supernovas. It was pathetic. The humans screamed into their own atmosphere, their leaders demanding negotiations, desperate for explanations. But the Dominion did not respond. There was no need. Within an hour, Earth's fate was sealed. The orbital bombardments would begin soon, and then humanity would be another footnote in the history of galactic conquest. But then, something happened. Something that should have been impossible. The UNSV Revenant arrived with no warning. No distortion of space-time. No gravitational ripple. One moment, the Dominion fleet was in perfect formation. The next, it was not. A warship, if it could even be called that, emerged from the darkness of space. A jagged, angular monstrosity of blackened steel and layered armor, pockmarked with battle scars. It was enormous, nearly rivaling the Dominion's flagships. Yet its silhouette was crude, brutal, lacking the smooth elegance of the Empire's engineered perfection. It bore no markings, no standard hull designs, no sleek Dominion-style propulsion systems. It looked wrong, and yet it was undeniably human. The Revenant did not transmit an identification code. It did not broadcast diplomatic signals. It did not ask for surrender. It simply existed. For the first time in recorded history, the Dominion hesitated. Their war doctrine was absolute. They had planned for every possible reaction from humanity: panic, resistance, surrender. But this? This was not in their calculations. The Revenant drifted toward the fleet, utterly silent. It did not appear on the Dominion's standard sensor arrays, as if it were a ghost in the void. They had to rely on visual confirmation, an insult to their technological superiority, a single human warship, alone, against 50 of the most powerful vessels in the known galaxy. The Dominion's Supreme Admiral, High Executor Varesh, watched, from the bridge of his command ship. His decision was obvious. Destroy it. A dozen plasma lances erupted from the Dominion warships, each one capable of slicing through mountains. Energy beams surged toward the Revenant, illuminating the void in a dazzling spectacle of destruction. But the moment before impact, the ship vanished. Not through a hyperspace jump, not through cloaking technology. It simply phased out of reality. The plasma lances struck nothing but empty space. An error? A sensor malfunction? No, this was something else. And then, without warning, the Revenant reappeared. Inside the Dominion's formation, a moment of confusion, a hesitation. Then, the Revenant opened fire. The first Strike Dominion warships were designed to be perfect. Their shields could withstand direct hits from nuclear-class weaponry. Their hulls were crafted from hyper-compressed alloys stronger than neutronium. Their defenses were impenetrable. And yet the Revenant's weapons tore through them like paper. It did not fire plasma lances. It did not use missiles. It unleashed something far worse, something the Dominion had no countermeasure for. A pulse. Wave rippled through space, distorting reality itself. The moment it touched the first Dominion vessel, the ship ceased to exist. No explosion, no wreckage. Just gone. A second wave. Another ship erased. Then a third. Then a fourth. The Dominion fleet erupted into chaos. They had never encountered a weapon like this before. No shield could repel it. No armor could resist it. The Revenant drifted forward, unhurried, like a predator toying with its prey. It did not fire in a frenzy. It did not panic. Every shot was calculated, precise, final, and then it spoke, a single transmission. Not from the ship's communications array, but directly into the minds of every Dominion officer. A voice, cold, mechanical, and yet undeniably human. You should not have come here. For the first time in thousands of years, the Dominion knew fear. The war begins. High Executor Varesh staggered back, gripping the edge of his command console. This was impossible. No species had ever stood against the Dominion. And yet, here was a single human warship dismantling his fleet like a god of destruction. The Revenant's weapons fired again. Another warship vanished. Then another. The Dominion's perfect, unstoppable fleet was being reduced to nothing. This was no ordinary vessel. This was no standard human warship. This was something else. Something the Dominion had never prepared for. And as the Revenant drifted forward, its weapons charging for another assault, one thing became clear. The war for Earth had just begun. The Dominion fleet, once an unstoppable force, was now a graveyard of burning wreckage. Warships that had conquered entire civilizations lay in ruin, torn apart not by brute force, but by something far beyond their understanding. The UNSV Revenant, a single human warship, had turned the tide of battle in ways the Dominion had never believed possible, and yet the Revenant remained silent, drifting through the debris like a specter. It did not move with the arrogance of a victorious warship, nor did it display the calculated precision of a military vessel. It was something else. Something terrifyingly unknown. A technological anomaly. High Executor. Varesh's mind raced as he analyzed the impossible data streaming across his command console. The Revenant's energy signatures made no sense. It did not run on fusion, antimatter, or even exotic matter like Dominion vessels. Its power source was unreadable, not invisible, not cloaked, just absent, as if the laws of physics had no claim over it. Its weapons, those terrifying pulses that erased ships from existence, did not match any known energy wavelength. The Dominion's best scientists had spent centuries perfecting their war technology, yet this ship wielded something beyond their comprehension. Where had it come from? How had the humans built something like this? No. Varesh's blood ran cold as the realization struck him. This was not human technology. The Dominion strikes back panic had already spread through the remaining Dominion fleet. Warships, once held in tight formations, now scattered in disarray. Some attempted to engage the Revenant, while others fled toward the edges of the system, anything to escape the wrath of the ghost ship. But Varesh was not a coward. He had commanded the Dominion's war machine for over 2 centuries. He had brought entire species to their knees, turned planets into lifeless tombs. He would not allow his legacy to be undone by a single vessel. Recalibrate all weapons to randomized frequencies, he barked. Target that ship and fire at full power. Across the fleet, thousands of plasma cannons, gravitic torpedoes, and quantum lances adjusted their output. This time, when the weapons fired, they unleashed a storm of destruction unlike anything seen before. The space around the Revenant collapsed. The sheer force of Dominion weaponry warped the fabric of reality itself, tearing open miniature black holes that swallowed light and matter alike. It was an attack designed to obliterate anything caught within its grasp. And yet, the Revenant remained untouched. The moment before impact, it phased again, slipping between dimensions, flickering in and out of existence like a ghost in the machine. When it reappeared, it was behind the Dominion warships, an impossible maneuver that defied every law of physics. Then it retaliated. A single pulse, a ripple through space. 3 Dominion ships vanished instantly, their atoms unmade by an unknown force. No explosion, no debris. Simply gone. Varesh clenched his fists. Impossible. But his horror had only begun. The Revenant speaks for. A second time the voice emerged, not from a transmission but directly into their minds. It was not a message. It was not a warning. It was a question. What are you afraid of? The bridge crew recoiled as if struck. Some clutched their heads. Others collapsed to their knees. The voice was cold, mechanical. But there was something else lurking beneath. Something inhuman. A Dominion officer gasped, eyes wide with terror. High Executor! The ship! It's reading our minds! Varesh's breath caught in his throat. This was beyond warfare. This was beyond technology. The Revenant wasn't just fighting them. It was studying them, learning, adapting, and it was winning. Humanity's darkest secret. But the Revenant was no ordinary warship. It was no experimental superweapon, no last-ditch defense from a desperate species. It was something far, far worse, a relic of humanity's past, a forgotten horror unleashed upon the galaxy. Because humanity's history was not one of conquest, nor of expansion. It was one of survival. Long before they had reached the stars, long before they had unified as a species, humans had faced extinction. Time and time again. Plagues, wars, disasters, and something else. Something even they had buried deep in the shadows of their history. A war. Not against themselves, not against nature, against something else. Something that had come from the stars long before the Dominion had even existed, and the Revenant was a remnant of that war. The Dominion's final gambit. Varesh's composure cracked as the truth settled in. The Revenant wasn't fighting them like an enemy. It was dismantling them like prey, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be hunted. He had only one option left. All ships, full retreat. The command sent shockwaves through the fleet. The Dominion did not retreat. They did not surrender. To flee was unthinkable, dishonorable. But this was not a battle. It was an execution. Engines roared to life as the surviving Dominion vessels turned, abandoning their formations, their pride, their very empire in a desperate bid to escape the Revenant's wrath. But the ship did not pursue them. Instead, it let them run, like a predator allowing the wounded to flee. For now. The war had just begun as the Dominion ships disappeared into the void. Earth remained untouched. The Revenant drifted in silence, watching, waiting. And somewhere in the depths of the ship, a presence stirred. The war was far from over. It had only just begun. The Dominion had never known fear. For thousands of years they had ruled the stars, crushing opposition with calculated precision. To them, war was not a chaotic struggle, it was a science. Every battle followed a pattern, Every opponent was predictable. Until now. Until the UNSV Revenant appeared. The Dominion fleet had been shattered, their retreat a disgraceful smear on their empire's history. High Executor Varesh, once the most feared military commander in the galaxy, now sat in the bridge of his damaged flagship, staring into the void. He was not just shaken. He was afraid. The Revenant was not a warship. It was not a secret human superweapon. It was something else entirely, something ancient, something wrong. And now, the Dominion needed to know what it was. A call for reinforcements. The Dominion's remaining fleet limped into a secure sector, retreating to the heavily fortified command station Xerxes 9, an artificial world located deep within Dominion-controlled space. This station, the heart of the Dominion's military intelligence network, had never been breached, never been threatened. Varesh did not waste time. He sent a priority transmission to the Dominion High Council, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance. "We have encountered a force unlike any in recorded history. I request immediate reinforcement of the Sol system and full mobilization of the Ascendant Armada." The response was immediate. A hologram flickered to life before him. A tall, regal figure cloaked in dark crimson robes. Supreme Chancellor Zalzareth, ruler of the Dominion. His piercing, inhuman eyes studied Varesh with cold intensity. "High Executor," Zalzareth said, his voice slow and deliberate. "Explain." Varesh exhaled sharply, forcing himself to regain composure. "The humans have unleashed a vessel of unknown origin. It is not bound by conventional physics. It phases through attacks, wields a weapon that erases matter from existence and—" He hesitated. The voice, the Revenant's whisper that had echoed inside his skull, pulling at his fears, his memories. Zalzareth's expression darkened. "And?" Varesh clenched his fists. "It spoke to us, directly into our minds." The room fell silent. Then, a second figure appeared in the hologram. This one was not Dominion. It was something else, a creature draped in metallic armor, its body half machine, half organic. Its eyes burned with eerie white light, and when it spoke, its voice was laced with something unnatural. "Then it has awoken." Varesh stiffened. "What are you talking about?" The figure, known only as the Keeper, turned its gaze toward him. "You have encountered an echo, the forgotten horror." The echoes, the Dominion had always believed itself to be the greatest force in the universe, but that was because they had only ever encountered civilizations that were still young. There were things older than the Dominion, things that had lived, and things that had died. The echoes were neither. They were remnants of an ancient war. Not a war fought over territory or power, but a war against something the Dominion could not comprehend. A war against a force so dangerous that even its defeated remnants could destroy entire civilizations. The Keeper's voice was heavy, burdened by knowledge Varesh wished he did not need. "The Revenant is not human." Varesh's breath hitched. "It is piloted by humans. But the vessel itself, it is a construct of the lost war. A relic forged by an empire that no longer exists." Zalzareth's gaze sharpened. "And how do you know this?" The Keeper's mechanical eyes flickered. "Because my kind buried them." The unsealed Volta hush fell over the chamber. The Keeper's species, the Vorthan archivists, were not warriors. They were not conquerors. They were record keepers, ancient beings that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations long before the Dominion's first warship was ever constructed. And now, for the first time in Dominion history, they spoke of something the High Council had never heard before. The war that ended long before your kind emerged. We called it the War of Unmaking, a conflict fought against an enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be understood. They did not invade for conquest. They did not destroy for resources. They simply consumed. The Dominion officers in the room exchanged uneasy glances. The Keeper continued. "The Revenant was built to fight that enemy. It is not just a warship. It is a weapon designed to counter something far worse than the Dominion." Varesh's mind raced. "If it is a weapon, then why does it target us?" The Keeper's gaze darkened. "Because you woke it up. A terrible choice." For centuries, humanity had remained unnoticed, hidden away on their tiny blue planet, too primitive to draw the attention of the greater galaxy. But the moment the Dominion invaded Earth, They triggered something they could not control. The Revenant had not been launched to defend humanity. It had been released to eradicate a threat, and to the Revenant, the Dominion was just another enemy to be erased. Varesh's throat went dry. "Can we destroy it?" The Keeper was silent. "Then, you do not destroy an echo. You either contain it, or you run." The Dominion's gamble silence fell over the chamber. Zalzareth, Supreme Chancellor of the Dominion, had not spoken in several minutes. Now his gaze flickered with something unreadable. Then he spoke. "No." Varesh straightened. "Chancellor?" Zalzareth's expression was cold, calculating. "We do not run. We do. The Dominion has never fled from an enemy, and we will not start now." The Keeper frowned. "Then you will die." Zalzareth's tone did not change. "If what you say is true, then the Revenant is a relic of a war long past. It is powerful, yes, but it is also old, flawed. It can be outmaneuvered." Varesh hesitated. "Sir, we barely escaped with our lives. If we send more ships, we risk losing the entire fleet." Zalzareth turned to him. "And if we do not, then humanity survives. They will know we can be beaten. And that is something the Dominion cannot allow." For the Dominion, survival was not just about power. It was about control. If the galaxy saw that the Dominion could bleed, then rebellion would spread like wildfire. Life before him, a tall, regal figure cloaked in dark crimson robes. Supreme Chancellor Zalzareth, ruler of the Dominion. His piercing, inhuman eyes studied Varesh with cold intensity. They had no choice. They had to win. The hunt begins, the Dominion's war machine mobilized. Thousands of warships, millions of troops. Weapons designed to reduce entire planets to cinders. The full strength of an empire that had never lost a war. Their mission, destroy the Revenant. No matter the cost, they would return to Sol. They would finish what they started, and this time, they would make sure the Revenant never rose again. But they didn't know the truth. Because deep within the void, aboard the UNSV Revenant, something stirred. Something that had waited far too long to be awakened. The Dominion thought they were the hunters, but they had just stepped into the jaws of something far, far worse. And this time, the Revenant was not alone. The Dominion was coming. Across the void, their fleets mobilized, tens of thousands of warships, battle stations, and world-shattering weapons converging toward the Sol system like an unstoppable storm. This was not a mere invasion. It was annihilation. But what the Dominion didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that the war had already changed. The Revenant had awoken, and it was not alone. The signal from Earth far below, on Earth's surface, humanity, watched in grim anticipation. They had seen what the Dominion was capable of. Cities burned. Entire continents had been bombarded from orbit. But now they had something the Dominion had not accounted for. The UNSV Revenant. In a classified military bunker beneath the frozen wastes of Antarctica, the last remnants of Earth's military leadership gathered around a glowing console. The encrypted data stream pulsed with unnatural energy, an unreadable frequency that should not have existed within the known laws of physics. It was a message, not from the Revenant itself, but from something else. "Sir," a technician whispered, voice trembling. "We're receiving a response. General Elias Grayson, the highest-ranking officer of Earth's surviving military forces, leaned forward." "From the ship?" "No." The technician's face was pale. "From inside it. The Revenant's prisoner deep within the UNSV Revenant. Something stirred. Something old. Something that had never been meant to wake up." The Dominion believed the Revenant was a weapon, a relic of an ancient war. They were only half right. The Revenant was not just a ship, it was a prison, a containment unit built to hold something that could not be destroyed. And now, after millennia of silence, that something had spoken. Its voice was not human, not Dominion, not even of this universe. "You have come to finish the war." The Revenant's core pulsed, sending waves of unreadable energy through the void. The message traveled faster than light, skipping across dimensions, warping the very fabric of space-time, and something out there, something buried deep in the cosmic dark, responded. The Dominion thought they were facing a superweapon, but now they had just awoken an extinction event. The Dominion's fatal mistake aboard. The Dominion flagship, Wrathborn, High Executor Varesh, stood on the bridge, watching as the massive fleet approached the Sol system. He had studied the battle reports, analyzed every frame of footage from the Revenant's attack, and yet, no matter how many simulations he ran, no matter how many counter-strategies he devised, there was one inescapable truth. They had no idea how to kill the Revenant. They had no idea what it even was, but it didn't matter. They would bring fire and death. Zal Zareth, Supreme Chancellor of the Dominion, had issued a single command: erase Earth. Not subjugation, not occupation. Total annihilation. The Dominion had destroyed civilizations before. They had turned once thriving planets into lifeless husks. But as they prepared their weapons, as they charged their planetary siege cannons and positioned their war fleets for orbital bombardment, they didn't see it coming. The Revenant moves. For the first time since the battle, the UNSV Revenant stirred. But it did not fire. It did not engage. Instead, it vanished. A ripple in space-time, a distortion in the quantum field, then nothing. Varesh's eyes widened. Where did it go? Sensor officers scrambled for answers. We don't know. It's gone. No warp signature, no cloaking field. It just... Alarms blared. A Dominion warship, one of their capital-class dreadnoughts, suddenly stopped. Its engines flickered, then died. Then another, and another. Across the fleet, Dominion warships began shutting down, weapons offline, shields disabled. Even life support flickered, plunging ships into total silence. And then, something moved inside. Them. The infestation begins. The Revenant hadn't just disappeared. It had entered them, not as a ship, not as a physical object, but as something else, something that hacked their systems, that rewrote their very code. The Revenant was no ordinary warship. It was a living intelligence, a self-evolving construct of war. And now, it was inside the Dominion's own fleet. Varesh turned, eyes burning with panic. Shut down all AI networks! Cut all digital interfaces now! But it was already too late. Across the fleet, Dominion warships began turning against each other. Weapons discharged at random. Shields collapsed. Shipboard AI systems turned against their own crews, locking them inside their own command decks. The Dominion fleet, once the most powerful armada in the galaxy, was now a battlefield against itself. And in the chaos, the Revenant reappeared, not alone. The unknown awakens something else had arrived. At the edge of the system, beyond the orbit of Pluto, space twisted and bled. Reality itself seemed to fracture as something emerged from the abyss. A fleet, but not human, not Dominion. Something older. Something that should have remained buried. The Dominion had assumed that humanity was alone in this fight. That the Revenant was a mere anomaly. They were wrong. The Revenant was a beacon, a distress call to something that had been waiting, watching. And now, after eons of silence, it had answered. The Dominion's final moments, Varesh could do nothing but watch as the sky tore open. Something beyond his understanding, beyond physics, was entering the battle. Warships that defied logic, that radiated energies no scanner could process. Ships that should not exist. And yet, here they were. The Revenant drifted toward them, acknowledged them. And then, it spoke. But this time, it was not a whisper. Not a question. It was a sentence, a judgment. The war is not over. Then, the new fleet opened fire, and the Dominion finally understood what it meant to be hunted. The Dominion had spent millennia as the ultimate predator of the stars. They were the ones who brought terror, who ended civilizations before they could rise against them. Their war machine was flawless, their conquests inevitable. But now, for the first time in their empire's history, they were the prey. The Revenant had called something from the void, and it had answered. Dominion warships, once the pinnacle of military engineering, were powerless. Their AI-driven targeting systems were compromised, their shipboard security overridden. And the true nightmare was only beginning, because beyond the Revenant, beyond the human resistance, something else had arrived. Something that had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The Unknown Armada. At the farthest edges of the battle, near the Oort cloud, the Dominion's long-range sensors detected the impossible. Ships. Not just a fleet. An armada. But these were not human vessels. They were not Dominion warships. They were something else entirely. Their hulls seemed to shift as if they were not fully bound to the laws of physics. Their energy signatures flickered between dimensions, unreadable even to the Dominion's most advanced sensors. They moved in a way no organic mind could comprehend, like ghosts in the void, warping in and out of real space with unnatural precision. And at the head of this impossible fleet was a single vessel. Larger than anything in the known galaxy, it was not a ship. It was a relic, a living fragment of something older than the Dominion, older than the war that had birthed the Revenant itself. A voice, cold, mechanical, yet laced with something eerily organic, whispered through the Dominion's communication channels. A single word. Judgment. The slaughter begins. The Dominion had brought its entire war machine to bear against Earth. Tens of thousands of warships, enough firepower to reduce an entire solar system to ruin. But it didn't matter, because they were not fighting a war anymore. They were being hunted. The Revenant moved first. It phased forward, appearing inside the Dominion's formation before they could react. Its weapons fired. Not beams, not projectiles, but something worse. A black, pulsing energy that did not damage ships. It erased them. One moment, a Dominion dreadnought was there. The next, gone. No explosion. No wreckage. Just empty space where it had once been. Panic spread through the Dominion fleet like wildfire. Admirals screamed orders. Ships fired blindly into the dark. But their weapons did nothing. Their missiles phased through the Revenant as if it wasn't there. Their energy beams scattered into nothingness, and then the Unknown Armada struck, a new type of warfare. The Dominion's war machine was built for conventional warfare, planetary sieges, fleet battles, overwhelming force. But this enemy, it fought differently. They didn't just destroy Dominion ships, they consumed them. Strange, tendril-like energy crawled through the Dominion's ships, spreading like a virus. Hulls blackened and twisted, reshaping into something unrecognizable. Crew members screamed as their own bodies warped, absorbed into the growing nightmare. Entire capital ships were swallowed whole by the creeping, living void. The Dominion had believed themselves the pinnacle of evolution. Now, they were being recycled into something else. Varesh watched in horror as his fleet, his empire's pride, was dismantled ship by ship. His own crew screamed as the shadows crept toward the Wrathborn, their bodies flickering between reality and something wrong. He reached for his communicator, voice shaking. "This is High Executor Varesh. Fall back. Abandon the attack. All forces retreat." But there was nowhere to go. Earth's final defense as the battle raged in orbit. Earth's last remaining defense forces watched from below. Humanity had no illusions. Even with the Revenant, even with this mysterious new fleet, they knew the war was far from over. But something was different. For the first time since the Dominion's arrival, humanity was not the one running. They watched as the invincible Dominion fleet collapsed. They saw monsters turn against their former masters, and deep within the UNSV Revenant, General Elias Grayson finally understood. This was never about Earth, he whispered. The Revenant had not awakened to defend humanity. It had awakened to destroy a greater threat. And humanity? They were simply caught in the middle. The Dominion's last gamble, despite the horror, despite the impossible enemy they now faced, the Dominion still had one last move. Supreme Chancellor Zalzareth's orders had been clear. If the fleet was compromised, Earth was to be erased. If they could not have victory, then there would be nothing left for anyone to claim. A single command was sent, and the Dominion's last doomsday weapon activated. A ship the size of a small moon, hidden deep in the fleet's core. A vessel that had never been used before. Last resort built to wipe entire planets from existence. The Oblivion Device. A weapon designed not to destroy planets, but to collapse stars. The final countdown from deep space, the device locked onto Sol. The countdown began. In 10 minutes, the Dominion's revenge would be complete. The sun would collapse into a black hole, erasing everything. Humanity, the Revenant, the Unknown Armada, all of it. Aboard the Wrathborn, Varesh clenched his jaw. If he was going to die, he would make sure Earth died with him. His voice rang out over the Dominion's failing comms. The humans believe they have won. He glared at the Revenant through the viewport. But in 10 minutes, there will be no victory, no war, no history. He grinned. Only darkness. But then, the Revenant turned. It was no longer focused on the Dominion's collapsing fleet, no longer focused on the unknown horrors that had joined the fight. It had detected the Oblivion Device. And for the first time, it did something it had not done before. It spoke to humanity, not in whispers, not in riddles, but in a single, clear message. If you wish to live, fight. The Dominion had made its final desperate move. The Oblivion Device, a world-ending weapon hidden within their fleet, had locked onto Sol. In less than 10 minutes, it would collapse Earth's sun into a singularity, erasing the entire system. From existence, humanity was no longer fighting for victory. They were fighting for survival. And at the center of it all, the UNSV Revenant had issued a command, a challenge, a final test. If you wish to live, fight. Earth mobilizes. Across the broken remains of Earth's defenses, the signal was received. Scattered warships, long thought useless against the Dominion's might, suddenly came alive. Orbital stations that had been left derelict for months flickered with power. Even ancient pre-war satellites, relics of an outdated era, were coming online. The Revenant wasn't just speaking to humanity's military. It was speaking to everything. Every system, every machine, every piece of forgotten technology was now under its influence, and somehow, humanity understood. General Elias Grayson, standing within the remains of Earth's last command bunker, felt something in his gut that he hadn't felt since the war began. Hope. The Revenant wasn't simply a weapon. It was an awakening. And now, humanity was awake. All forces, Grayson growled into the command network, his voice steady. The Revenant has given us a chance. I don't care if you're flying a rusted-out freighter or an old defense drone, get into the fight. From IG, the underground hangars, forgotten warships powered up. Civilian vessels, modified for combat in desperation, surged toward orbit. Even outdated battle stations once deemed unfit for modern warfare were reactivating. This wasn't a battle of fleets anymore. It was humanity itself, rising for one last fight. The Dominion's nightmare aboard the Wrathborn, High Executor Varesh felt something he had never felt before. Fear, not of death, not of defeat, but of not understanding what was happening. The Revenant had turned Earth's deadliest defeat into an unpredictable war, and worst of all, it had changed the battlefield. This is impossible, a Dominion officer stammered. Their fleet was destroyed. We wiped out their command infrastructure, their defenses. And yet, Varesh snarled, they still stand. For the first time in Dominion history, their prey was refusing to die. The Executor turned toward the viewing panel, locking his gaze onto the growing Oblivion Device. Then we end this. The Revenant moves. The UNSV Revenant did not hesitate. It had sensed the Oblivion Device's countdown. It had calculated the outcome, and it had chosen its path. It vanished. One moment, it was hanging above Earth like a silent guardian. The next, it was inside the Dominion fleet. It didn't travel. It didn't warp. It simply was. It emerged at the heart of the Oblivion Device, phasing inside the massive construct. Its black, impossible hull twisted and reformed, merging with the enemy weapon like a virus infiltrating a host. Inside the Dominion fleet, panic erupted. Our weapon, it's being compromised. The system's rewriting itself. We can't stop it. Varesh watched in horror as the Oblivion Device began to change. Its once pristine Dominion architecture darkened. Strange, unnatural symbols etched themselves across its surface. The energy within the core began to reverse. Instead of pulling the sun toward collapse, it began to feed it. And then, in a moment that should not have been possible, the Revenant spoke directly to Varesh. "You were warned." A cold alien terror settled into the High Executor's bones. "Fire everything!" Varesh roared. "Destroy the Revenant, now!" The sky burns. The remaining Dominion fleet unleashed hell. Everything they had left, plasma cannons, disruptor lances, gravitic warheads, all of it slammed into the Revenant. The void lit up with energy as the Dominion poured their fury into the ancient warship. For a moment there was silence. Then, the Revenant fired back. It wasn't a weapon in the conventional sense. It wasn't an explosion, or a beam, or even an attack. It was corruption. A pulse rippled outward, black, hungry, all-consuming, and everything it touched ceased to exist, not destroyed, not vaporized, erased. Dominion warships disintegrated as if they had never been built. Entire dreadnoughts, some older than the human race itself, were wiped from time. The Dominion fleet, once invincible, was now vanishing, and at the heart of it, the Oblivion Device collapsed. A new sun rises. With a final terrifying pulse, the Revenant unleashed one last act of defiance. Instead of collapsing the sun, it rekindled it. The solar core, once moments away from implosion, flared to life. The impending collapse reversed itself, and in its place, a surge of new energy. Earth's sun did not die. It evolved. A new light filled the solar system, brighter, stronger, pulsing with an energy unknown to science. The Dominion had failed, and now they were running. The hunt begins. High Executor Varesh stood frozen on the bridge of his failing flagship. His empire, his entire race, was collapsing before his eyes. Their greatest fleet, their most powerful weapon, all gone. His voice was barely a whisper. "This isn't possible." And then, from the depths of space, something answered. Not the Revenant, not humanity, but the unknown fleet. They had waited, they had watched, and now, with the Dominion broken, they were coming. From the depths of the void, the Unknown Armada made its final move. They were not here to save Earth. They were not allies. They were something else, and their war was only beginning. The Dominion was broken. Their greatest war fleet, once the scourge of the stars, had been annihilated. Their ultimate weapon, the Oblivion Device, had been turned against them, and the sun they sought to extinguish now burned brighter than ever. But the battle was far from over, because something else had entered the war. The Unknown Armada. They had waited beyond the edge of known space, unseen and patient, watching, calculating. And now, with the Dominion collapsing, they had made their move. What lies beyond the veil? High Executor Varesh barely had time to process what was happening. His fleet was gone. His empire was on the verge of extinction. And yet the Dominion's final moments were not to be decided by humans, nor by the Revenant. No, something older, something worse had come to finish them. Through the burning wreckage of the battle, the Unknown Armada advanced. Their ships did not move like any known vessel. They shifted, appearing in multiple places at once before collapsing into a single location. Their hulls were impossible to define, flickering between material forms, and at the heart of their fleet, their flagship loomed. It was no ship, it was a monolith, a structure that had existed before the stars themselves, a blackened fragment of some lost civilization, pulsing, with unreadable energy signatures, and from its depths, a signal emerged. Not words, not commands, but an equation, an impossibly complex algorithm, beamed directly into every remaining Dominion system, every surviving warship, every fleeing soldier. Varesh felt the data flood his mind. It was a message, but not one meant to be understood by organics. It was a calculation, one that ended in absolute certainty, and that certainty was death. The end of an empire across the battlefield, the Unknown Armada began to cleanse the remnants of the Dominion. They did not fire weapons. Instead, their ships absorbed what remained. One by one, the last of the Dominion vessels vanished. Not in explosions, not in wreckage, but in consumption. It was as if they had never existed. Varesh's flagship, the Wrathborn, was the last to remain. The High Executor could do nothing but watch. His empire's fleets, millennia of conquest, thousands of star systems, untold trillions of his kind, erased in minutes. And then, the Unknown Armada turned its attention to Earth. Humanity's new war, from the surface of Earth. General Elias, Grayson and what remained of human command stared at the skyline of destruction. The Revenant had saved them. The Dominion was defeated. But now, something worse had taken its place. And the Revenant? It was silent. The warship that had been humanity's savior had suddenly ceased its movements. Its black hull, once alive with strange shifting lights, was dormant. And then, from deep space, the Unknown Armada spoke. Not with words, not with sound, but with a single thought imprinted into every human mind. Witness. A message from beyond time images flooded Grayson's mind. Not visions of war, not conquest, but history. A history that did not belong to humans. The Unknown Armada had been here before. Not in this war, not even in this era. But before humanity even existed, before Earth, before the Dominion. They were not invaders, they were not conquerors, they were something far worse. Custodians. Their purpose was singular, to correct civilizations that reached too far, to erase those who threatened the balance, and, now, they had judged both the Dominion and humanity. One was found unworthy and erased. The other was yet to be decided. The final test. The monolithic flagship of the Unknown Armada loomed in orbit, its vast impossible structure casting a shadow over Earth's surface. A final equation was broadcast, a puzzle, a test, and humanity had seconds to solve it. If they failed, the war would end. But so would they. And in that moment, Elias Grayson realized the truth. This was never about war, never about conquest. This was a game of survival. And the Revenant was the only thing that understood. The rules. Aboard the silent warship, something reactivated. Lights flickered, systems surged. The entity within awoke, and with one last, desperate act, it answered the puzzle. The Unknown Armada had issued its final test. A puzzle. A question older than humanity itself. The answer would determine everything. The Dominion had been erased, not conquered, not enslaved, but completely removed from existence. Their empires, their history, their achievements, all gone, as if they had never been. And now, humanity's fate rested in a single response. The UNSV Revenant, the warship that had changed the battle, had reactivated. Its black, impossible hull pulsed with unreadable energies, and for the first time since its arrival, it spoke, not in words, not in sound, but in pure thought. And its response was something no one expected. The code that rewrote History General Elias Grayson felt the message flood his mind. He wasn't just hearing words, he was experiencing something beyond human comprehension. A code so ancient, so vast, that it couldn't be measured in numbers or equations. This was a response beyond logic, beyond mathematics, beyond even the understanding of the Unknown Armada. And for the first time, they hesitated. The moment of judgment. The monolithic flagship of the Unknown Armada ceased its advance. The colossal vessel, a relic of an unseen war, seemed to pause. And then, it fractured. Not in an explosion, not in destruction, but in possibility. The ship that had been one became many. Its form split across time and space, diverging into endless versions of itself, each one existing in a separate reality. It was as if it had never been whole. The Revenant had done something impossible. It had rewritten the Unknown Armada's very existence. Their history was no longer singular. Their purpose was no longer absolute. And that was something they had never prepared for. A new universe. The sky shifted. The monolith was no longer there. The unknown. Armada did not retreat. They did not surrender. They were simply gone. Erased, transcended, no one would ever know. But what remained was humanity, and something new. The Revenant's final act. The UNSV Revenant, the warship that had defied time, space, and death itself, began to collapse. Its impossible hull, forged from unknown materials, fractured like glass. The symbols that had once pulsed with unearthly energy dimmed, and then, from its core, a single human figure emerged. A man. He was dressed in an ancient Earth military uniform, one from before the war, before the Dominion, before everything. His face was young, yet filled with centuries of knowledge. And in his eyes, there was understanding. He looked toward Earth, toward the planet that had fought, suffered, and survived. And he smiled. Then, in a whisper only Grayson could hear, he spoke. "You were never meant to win, but you found another way." With that, the figure vanished, and the UNSV Revenant was no more. What comes next? Silence fell over the battlefield. The Dominion was gone. The Unknown Armada had been changed. And humanity had done the impossible. They had defied the cycle. They had rewritten fate. But the question remained. What had the Revenant truly been? A weapon? A warning? A remnant of something beyond the stars? No one knew. All they knew was that the war was over, and yet, as Elias Grayson stood on the ruined surface of Earth, staring into the endless expanse of space, he had a feeling. Certainty. The battle had ended, but the war for the future had just begun.